Does your Game Boy Color screen look like it lost a fight with a blowtorch? Does it look like it was baked in the oven and is now nice and crispy like these? Have you purchased another handheld so that you can avoid this problem and actually just play games? You don't need to avoid it any longer. Let's fix it, and hopefully figure out why this happens in the first place. Your LCD is made up of several layers, and most screen burns occur in the topmost layer of the display, which is called the polarizer. There are 2 of these in each unit, and apparently you can burn the polarizer on the bottom of the display as well as the top. But I'm assuming that's a little bit harder to do since I've only seen the top layer affected with this issue. It can be as small as some discoloration on the outer edges of a screen, or as nasty as the chemical burn from Fight Club. Kinda looks like it too. So what really causes screen burns? From my little bit of research, it looks like they can be caused by a variety of factors. Some people say heat, others say it could be direct sunlight, age, moisture, or too much playtime on the screen. Honestly, it could be a combination of several of these factors, but let's do a little testing and see if we can find out what really causes it to happen. I'm going to be using screens that have a small amount of screen burn currently, and then showing the before and after effects of the different tests. My hope is that if we're using screens that are already showing signs of failure, that putting them through these tests will cause it to worsen faster than an LCD that has no issues to start with. First off, heat. I'm sure putting one of these screens in a microwave would look really awesome, but yeah, I'm not doing that. I have a different method that should produce much more stable results anyway. I have an old desk lamp that really puts out the heat, and I'm going to turn it on close to the test screen to see what happens. Then I'll do that a few times over the course of several days to see what results we get from it. Number 2 is moisture. The next test is to have the screen exposed to a constant stream of moisture. I'll have it suspended above a slow boiling pot of water for about an hour and then let it completely dry in place before we take a look at the results. Next up is sunlight. I have a feeling sunlight, or UV light more specifically, is one of the main culprits of screen burn. So I'm putting my next test screen in my east facing window where it will get direct and indirect sunlight for over the course of a month. This last one will test 2 theories at the same time: sunlight and heat. So you went on a road trip for spring break with your family when you were 12 and left your handheld face up in the back window. The car not only gets nice and hot during the day, but also you have direct and indirect sunlight over longer periods of time. I'll leave it in there for about a month and see what happens. After the fix, we'll check back to see if there's any changes to our burnt screen. So where do we get replacement parts from? Replacement parts are actually very easy to find and purchase. You just need to make sure you're getting the right ones. Polarizers filter or completely block the light on an LCD screen so you can see the images displayed properly. They can also come in different types like linear and circular polarization. For the Game Boy Color, we are looking for the circular version. If you get the linear type for a regular DMG Game Boy, it will just not work. These are widely available for very cheap online, but I buy most of my parts off of eBay, and that's where I found these for only a few bucks. You will need a few other items to finish the repair, like a hobby knife and cleaning supplies. I like to use high percentage isopropyl alcohol and Q-tips for the cleaning part, but if you'd like to use a rag instead, that'll work just as good. Disassemble your Game Boy and pull out the screen that needs to be fixed. You may hear some cracks while you do, and this is common. But don't worry, it's all part of the process. It could sound like you're destroying your screen during the removal, but it's also common to have a reaction like this while it happens. Normally the cracks that you're hearing are from the double-sided tape keeping the screen in place, but still be careful to make sure you don't shatter anything. After you have your LCD removed from its housing, carefully, and I can't stress how carefully, find the edge of the polarizer with a knife and start cutting at a slight angle to remove it. You must be very careful with this because it is a semi-dangerous process for your fingers. Remove at your own risk. Depending on how bad the burn is will determine how easy it is to actually remove the polarizer as well. I've found that you need to use a lot of pressure in order to cut through the glue on these, and it can be a very time-consuming task. Just take your time and go slow around the edges and you'll be fine. To aid you in your cutting, I've prepared some fitting dad jokes about sunburn. Enjoy while I dissect this polarizer. Alright, you ready for these? My friends asked me to stop hanging out with them after I got sunburn. They said I kept flaking on them. So good. For all you Pirates of the Caribbean fans, how do pirates treat sunburn? That's right, you guessed it. Hello, puppet. What do you call a sunburn librarian? Well read. Ugh. And last but not least, how do you treat sunburn in Hawaii? With aloha Vera. Ha. Ha. Okay, moving on. Next step is to clean all the old adhesive off of the LCD glass. Use some IPA and be prepared to be here for a while because this stuff is sticky. If you happen to not get all the polarizer off in the first steps, just keep cutting with your knife in the same pattern as before and you should be able to remove it over time. Even though this footage is sped up to show you how I do it, this part took me about 40 minutes to complete for just one screen. This is probably the most important step though, considering you want a very clean surface to attach your new polarizer to. These new films have a sticky side and a non-sticky side. There are protective films over both sides that must be removed for them to work properly as well. Just pull up on a corner and test to see if it is sticky or not. I like to mark the side that is not sticky so you know which side to put down first. You may have also noticed that the sheets are a little large. These need to be cut down to fit your screen size. But before cutting, just make sure you are cutting in the right direction. You can test this by laying it in place and tilting it. You will see the screen becomes dark and light, and you want it to be lighter. You can also do this while the Game Boy Color is on to confirm that you have it in the correct direction. Don't worry if it doesn't look quite right at first though. The protective film on either side of the polarizer causes some color distortions, and once it's removed it will look much more normal. Now make sure your screen is really clean, and I mean really clean. You may even want to use some canned air if you have it available to you, or do another quick wipe with some IPA to make sure there is no dust present at all on the screen, period. Then stick down the new polarizer and press firmly but gently from the center going out to the edges, much like applying a screen protector for your phone. Alternatively, you can apply the film and cut it after it's stuck in place. I just find it a lot easier to cut first and then apply it. Hook it back up to your Game Boy Color's main board and test it out. It works and looks great. This is what the new screen looks like versus the old screen. The screens don't look exactly like the originals once the repair is complete, but it is much better than having a burn smack dab in the middle of your LCD while you're trying to play something. Now let's check back to see if our test answered any questions as to why this happens in the first place. The heat test. I placed this unit under a desk lamp for a total of about 24 hours. I would turn it on and off to provide a few heating and cooling cycles at 4 hours at a time over the course of a few days. The number 4 screen was used for this test, and before it had a slight discoloration in the center and a little bump as well. After, it looks about the same, but it just has a little bit more discoloration in the center and is a bit darker. I would call this cause confirmed and say that it does affect the screen. The moisture test. I hung a screen above a slow boiling pot of water for about an hour and let it cool in place after that. It's hard to see in the before shots, but screen number 2 did have a slight discoloration in the outer edges. A very minor screen burn that was just starting, but still noticeable during play. After though, you can definitely see a change in the bump that has developed in the center of the screen, but the color doesn't seem to have changed much if at all with this test. Even though it is slight, I would still say this cause is confirmed. The sunlight test. Screen number 3 was placed in my east-facing window where it saw direct and indirect sunlight for a period of 30 days. This screen also had minor defects like the others. You can see a ring forming in the middle and some slight discoloration on the edges in the before shots. In the after shots, they looked the same. Surprisingly enough, I didn't notice much if any changes with this test at all. I thought for sure, given the length of time it was in the window, it would have at least darkened a bit, but it doesn't look like it was much different at all. Due to the variability of screen burns occurring, I'm going to call this cause plausible, but oddly enough, not 100% confirmed. The double test, sunlight and heat. Screen number 1 was left in the back window of a car for 30 days and got plenty of heat as well as direct and indirect sunlight. This unit was very similar in the before shots to the others and only had minor defects, like a small bubble starting to form in the center of the display. So what does the after look like? Yeah, I'd call that one confirmed. The display not only got darker, but it also has formed a secondary bubble ring around the middle, and it may have even burned the rear polarizer by the looks of it. This one is 100% confirmed, so remember kids, don't leave your Game Boy Colors in your car. And there you have it. Burnt screens are pretty much caused by everything. If you like this video, drop a like down below, and we'll see you next fix.